The night on the distant human colony was filled with silence, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence before destruction. The stars above were hidden by thick black smoke that rose into the sky. The once bright city now burned in broken pieces, streets glowing red with fire and dust. People ran, their faces pale, their hearts filled with fear. No one knew where safety was, because safety no longer existed. The enemy had come like shadows from the void, without warning, without mercy. They did not speak. They did not demand surrender. They only destroyed. Inside the underground shelter, men, women, and children sat in the dark. The walls shook again and again as something above exploded. Dust fell from the ceiling. A little boy cried, his small hands covering his ears. His mother pulled him close, whispering words of comfort she did not believe. Soldiers stood near the entrance, holding their rifles tightly, even though they knew those weapons were nothing against the invaders. Everyone waited for the end. The governor of the colony, a man who had once spoken with pride about the future of this world, now sat in silence. His voice was heavy when he finally spoke. No help is coming. The nearest fleet is too far. We are alone. His words cut through the room like a knife. No one argued. Everyone already knew the truth. Above the ground, the alien ships moved like dark insects in the sky. Their vessels did not shine with lights, only shadows. Instead of lasers, they used weapons that drained power. Human defense ships had fallen within minutes, their systems dead before they could fire. The enemy was efficient, cold, and unstoppable. The city's defenses were gone. The skies belonged to them now. In a small control room, hidden deep beneath the colony, a young engineer worked desperately on the broken communication array. His fingers moved fast, his eyes tired and red. He knew the system was jammed, but he still tried. Static filled the speakers, but then for a brief second, something strange appeared, a signal, weak but real. He froze, staring at the screen. It was not human. It was something massive moving in the dark of space. His heart raced. Could it be another enemy? Or something else? He saved the signal and whispered to himself, "Please, let it be hope." Back in the shelter, the ground shook again, stronger than before. The sound of alien machines echoed above. Children cried louder. One soldier whispered to another, "How long before they find this place?" The other soldier said nothing. His silence was the answer. The governor closed his eyes, remembering Earth, remembering the long journey that had brought humans here. They had dreamed of new beginnings, of freedom under new skies. Now, those dreams were burning in the flames above. He opened his eyes and looked at the people around him. He wanted to tell them to be brave, but the words would not come. The colony's last defense post fell. The remaining pilots, brave but hopeless, sent their final message before silence claimed them. In the shelter, a small radio caught the last words. "This is Commander Hale. To anyone listening, we did our best." Then the voice was gone. The people lowered their heads. There was no more resistance. The colony was finished. Yet in that moment of despair, the young engineer burst into the shelter, holding his tablet. His voice shook but carried a strange energy. "I found something," he shouted. Everyone turned to him, some with anger for breaking the silence, some with the faintest spark of hope. He showed the signal. Something is moving through deep space. It's huge. Bigger than their ships. I don't know what it is. The governor frowned. "Another enemy?" he asked. The engineer hesitated. "Maybe. Or maybe, it's one of ours." The words were dangerous. No one dared to believe them. The people exchanged looks. Could humanity truly send help? The governor shook his head slowly. "No fleet is near enough. It cannot be human." But the engineer held onto his hope. "Sir, it is not like their ships. It is different. I swear it." His voice was desperate, almost begging them to believe. For a moment, silence filled the shelter again. Then, far above, the sky shook with a sound none of them had heard before. A deep roar, different from the alien hum. The children stopped crying. The soldiers lifted their heads. The governor opened his eyes wide. Something was coming. The people did not know if it was friend or foe. They only knew the darkness had been broken by a new light, a sound that carried power, fury, and the promise of change. Hope and fear mixed together in every heart. In that silence, every ear waited, every eye turned to the sky, every soul prayed the same thing. Please, let it be human. The colony had fallen into a strange kind of silence. Not the silence of peace but the silence of fear. Above the ground, the alien ships moved in slow circles, their black metal bodies blocking out the stars. They looked like giant insects, each with sharp arms that stretched out like claws. Their movements were precise, almost mechanical, as if they were not ships at all but living creatures made of steel. Where they flew, lights died. Power vanished. Human machines stopped working as if drained of life itself. No one had seen technology like this before, and no one had found a way to fight it. The colony's streets were empty now, except for fire and smoke. Buildings that had once been full of laughter and light stood broken, their windows shattered. The air smelled of ash. Somewhere far away, a tower collapsed, shaking the ground. From the shelters, the people heard the sound and felt the vibrations in their bones. Every noise reminded them that the enemy was still there, searching. In the underground shelter, fear spread like sickness. The governor sat in the corner, silent, his face pale. He had no words left. The soldiers stood guard, but even they looked defeated. Their weapons hung loose in their hands. What good was a rifle against an enemy that fed on power itself? A young boy whispered to his mother, "Will they find us?" She pulled him close and lied softly, "No, they will not." But in her heart she was not sure. Far above, in the dark sky, the enemy mothership hovered. It was larger than any human vessel the colony had ever seen. Its surface was covered in strange patterns that glowed faintly, like veins of fire. From its belly, smaller ships fell one by one, spreading across the land. They moved with deadly purpose, hunting, scanning, pulling apart the ruins of the colony. Some survivors tried to run, hiding in the forests beyond the city, but the ships found them quickly. The sound of their weapons was not loud. It was like a deep hum, followed by silence. The survivors simply vanished. In the control room, the young engineer stared at the signal he had found. His fingers shook as he checked it again and again. It was still there, strong and clear. Something massive was moving through the dark. It was not the same as the alien ships. It had a different rhythm, a different power. He wanted to believe it was human, but doubt crept into his mind. What if it was worse? What if something greater was coming to finish what the invaders had started? Still, he could not keep the discovery to himself. He returned to the shelter and tried once more to explain. "This is not their signal," he said firmly. "It's not the same frequency. It feels different. It could be one of ours." The governor looked at him with tired eyes. "Do not give them false hope," he said. But even as he spoke, some of the people lifted their heads. They wanted to believe. Hope was dangerous, but it was also the only thing keeping them alive. Meanwhile, the enemy closed in. Their machines moved closer to the underground shelters. Soldiers reported faint vibrations above, the sound of heavy machines digging, searching. "They know we are here," one soldier whispered. The people in the shelter froze. Mothers held their children tighter. Fathers clenched their fists. Every second felt like an hour. One of the soldiers, older than the rest, leaned against the wall and whispered a story. He told the children about Earth, about how humanity had survived wars, plagues, and disasters before. "We are hard to kill," he said with a faint smile. But the children only stared with wide, frightened eyes. They had never seen Earth. To them, this colony was their only home, and it was dying. The alien mothership began to move again. Its massive shadow passed slowly across the burning city, blotting out the fires with its presence. The people underground felt the air grow colder. Machines inside the shelter flickered and died as the mothership's energy drained them. Darkness swallowed the room. Some cried. Some prayed. The governor pressed his hands together, whispering words no one could hear. In the silence, the engineer's tablet came alive again. The signal grew stronger, sharper. His eyes widened. Whatever was moving in space was closer now. Much closer. He looked at the governor. "It's coming," he said. The governor did not reply. He could not decide whether to feel fear or hope. The sound above grew louder. The aliens were digging, tearing the ground apart to reach the humans below. Dust rained from the ceiling of the shelter. Soldiers raised their rifles, ready for a fight they could not win. Children cried out. People screamed. And in the chaos, the engineer shouted, "Listen! It is not just the aliens. There is something else out there." Far above the planet, beyond the sight of the alien fleet, a shadow moved through the void. It was massive, its shape hidden by distance, its engines burning with fury. It cut through the darkness like a blade. The signal it sent was strong and powerful, nothing like the alien hum. It was something older, something human. In the underground shelter, no one could see it yet. They only heard the shaking sky, the growing noise, and the sound of the alien machines closing in. Between fear and hope, between despair and survival, every heart waited for the answer. Was this the end of the colony, or the beginning of something greater? No one knew, but all could feel it. Something was coming. Far away from the burning colony, deep in the endless ocean of stars, a warship slept. It was called the Resolute, and it was the pride of the human fleet. Its black hull was scarred from past battles, yet it remained strong, like a beast resting in the shadows, waiting to rise again. The ship was not near the colony. It had been patrolling a different sector, guarding against pirates and unknown dangers. But then, the signal came. A faint cry from the darkness. A human distress call, broken and weak, but still clear enough to reach the ears of the crew. Inside the bridge of the warship, alarms blinked as the message repeated. The crew listened in silence. It was the voice of Commander Hale from the colony's defense force. "This is Commander Hale. To anyone listening, we did our best." The voice cracked and faded into static. Then nothing. The bridge was quiet, except for the hum of the ship's engines. The crew exchanged uneasy looks. They knew what this meant. The colony was under attack, and it was falling. The captain of the Resolute, a man named Eric Vayner, stood in the center of the bridge. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp and cold. He had seen battles before. He had lost friends before. But hearing the last words of a fellow commander lit a fire inside him. He looked at his officers. "Status of the colony fleet?" he asked. The answer came quickly. "Destroyed, sir. Nothing remains." The captain's jaw tightened. He turned to the star map glowing before him. The colony was days away at normal speed. No reinforcements would arrive in time. By all logic, the people were already doomed. An officer, young and nervous, spoke carefully. "Captain, if we go, we will be alone. No backup. No support. The colony, it may already be lost." The crew looked at the captain, waiting. His voice came slowly, but with weight. "Humanity never abandons its own. Set course. Full burn." The order was clear. The warship would go into the fire. Engines roared as the Resolute came alive. Its giant thrusters flared with blue fire, shaking the void around it. The ship turned sharply, cutting across the sea of stars. The crew felt the weight of the decision. Some were afraid. Some were angry. But all of them understood. They were soldiers of humanity. Their duty was not to numbers or odds. Their duty was to the people crying in the dark. As the warship moved, the crew prepared. Weapons were armed. Missiles loaded. Shields charged. In the hangar, pilots checked their small fighter craft, their hands steady even though their hearts raced. Engineers rushed through the corridors, tightening bolts, checking power lines, whispering to each other that this mission might be their last. The ship carried hundreds of souls, all now bound to one fate. On the bridge, the captain stared at the star map. He could see the colony's location glowing red with distress signals. Around it, faint blips marked the alien fleet. No one knew what these creatures truly were. First contact had come with fire and death. No words. No diplomacy. Only silence and destruction. But the captain did not care who they were. He only cared that they were killing his people. The crew spoke in low voices, sharing their fears. "They drain power, sir," one officer said. "Our weapons might be useless." Another added, "If their mothership is as big as the reports say, we won't survive a direct fight." The captain let them speak. Then he said in a voice that cut through the fear, "We are not going there to survive. We are going there to fight." His words spread across the bridge, steady and sharp. Every crew member felt the weight of them. Hours passed as the warship closed the distance. The stars seemed to move faster, the engines pushing beyond limits. In the mess hall, soldiers sat together, eating quietly, some whispering prayers, some writing final messages to families they might never see again. In the medical bay, doctors prepared for the wounded they knew would soon come. Across the ship, fear was real, but so was determination. At last, the sensors lit up. The alien fleet came into range. Dozens of ships floated like shadows around the colony world. And at the center, the mothership. It was massive, larger than any human vessel. Its surface pulsed with strange light, veins of red fire crawling across its skin. The crew stared at the image on the screens. Some gasped. Some cursed under their breath. But the captain stood firm. "Bring us closer," he ordered. The warship moved forward, engines blazing, cutting through the darkness. The colony's last survivors, still hiding in underground shelters, felt the ground tremble again. They thought the aliens were digging deeper, but then came a new sound. A deep thunder from above. Different. Stronger. It was not the enemy. It was something else. For the first time in days, hope flickered. People looked at each other, whispering. Children stopped crying and listened. Soldiers lifted their rifles as if strength had returned to their arms. The governor, who had sat in silence for so long, opened his eyes wide. Something was coming through the darkness. Something human. Above the planet, the Resolute tore into the system, its weapons armed, its crew ready. The captain stood tall on the bridge, his voice steady. "Target the nearest alien vessel. Let them know humanity has not fallen." The warship awakened. And the galaxy was about to hear its roar. The colony had been silent for too long. Days had passed in fear, with only the sound of alien machines above and the cries of children below. But now, a new sound rolled through the underground shelters. It was not the low hum of the invaders. It was deeper, louder, like thunder shaking the bones of the world. The survivors froze, every ear straining. No one dared to speak. They all felt it. Something had changed. The governor stood slowly, his face pale in the flickering light of the dying lamps. His voice was almost a whisper. "That is not them." The soldiers lifted their heads, their eyes wide. Mothers held their children closer, but for the first time, they were not comforting them out of fear. They were trying to stop them from shouting in excitement. Hope was dangerous. Hope could kill. But the sound above was powerful, and it refused to be ignored. On the surface, the sky was alive with fire. The alien fleet moved like predators around the colony, their ships circling, draining the last sources of power. They had grown careless, certain of their victory. But when the Resolute arrived, tearing out of warp space, it was like a storm exploding in their midst. The warship's cannons blazed, missiles streaked through the dark, and alien vessels shattered one after another. The humans had come, and they had come with fury. Inside the mothership, the invaders reacted quickly. Their ships formed into groups, striking back with beams of energy that bent the void itself. They did not fear. They did not hesitate. To them, this was only another fight to finish. But the humans were different. The crew of the Resolute had no thought of retreat. They were not fighting for land or resources. They were fighting for the lives of their people below. And that gave them strength. In the underground shelter, the ground shook again and again. At first the people thought it was the enemy digging closer, but then came the echo of explosions above. The walls rumbled, dust fell, and the children covered their ears. But when the engineer checked his tablet, his face lit up. "It's them," he whispered. "It's human guns. We're not alone." His words spread quickly through the shelter, carried like fire. People began to weep, not from fear but from relief. For the first time, the impossible seemed possible. Still, fear remained. The alien mothership was larger than anything the humans had ever built. Its weapons drained energy from space itself. If the Resolute fell, the colony would be doomed again. Soldiers whispered among themselves, asking the question no one wanted to say aloud: could even a warship survive this? But the sound of human weapons continued above, and with every blast, hope grew stronger. On the bridge of the Resolute, the captain stood firm. The alien fleet swarmed them like a tide, dozens of ships attacking from every angle. The shields flickered as power drained, alarms screamed, but the captain's voice remained steady. "Hold the line. Fire all batteries." The crew obeyed without hesitation. They had no choice. This was the moment they had been born for. Fighter pilots launched from the hangar, their small ships darting through the chaos like sparks. They weaved between enemy vessels, firing missiles and luring the aliens into the path of the warship's heavy cannons. Some pilots fell, their ships vanishing in bursts of fire. But others pressed forward, their courage shining brighter than fear. The colony survivors could only imagine the battle above. They did not see the ships burning in the sky, but they heard the echoes. Each explosion felt like a heartbeat, each tremor like a promise. The children clung to their mothers, whispering, "The humans are here." The governor pressed his hands to his face. Tears slid down his cheeks, though he tried to hide them. He had believed they were forgotten, abandoned in the dark. But humanity had not abandoned them. Not yet. Then came a terrible sound. Louder than all the others. The ground shook violently, and dust poured from the ceiling. Some screamed, thinking the shelter was collapsing. The engineer checked his screen, his face turning pale. "The mothership," he whispered. "It's moving." The alien giant had entered the fight. In the sky, the mothership loomed, its massive shadow covering the warship. Energy pulsed across its skin, and a beam of red light cut through space, striking the Resolute's shields. The warship groaned, its systems straining. On the bridge, sparks flew as consoles overloaded. The crew fought to keep control. The captain gritted his teeth. "Target that monster. Give it everything we have." Missiles streaked from the warship, slamming into the mothership's hull. Explosions lit the void, but the alien ship remained unshaken. Its power was beyond anything the humans had seen. Yet the Resolute did not turn away. It kept firing, its guns blazing like the wrath of a dying star. In the shelter, the survivors waited in silence. They could feel the battle above in their bones. Some prayed. Some held hands. Some simply stared at the ceiling, whispering words of hope. The governor finally spoke again, his voice trembling but clear. "If they fall, we fall. But if they stand, we stand with them." The sound of the war filled the sky. Fire, thunder, silence, then fire again. The people could not see the outcome. They could only wait. Between fear and hope, between despair and survival, every second was an eternity. And high above, two giants clashed in the darkness. The sky above the colony burned with light. The Resolute had arrived like a storm, its guns tearing through the alien fleet. For the first time since the invasion began, the dark shapes of the enemy ships broke apart in fire. Metal fragments rained down through the clouds, streaks of flame cutting across the night. On the ground, the survivors could feel every explosion shaking the earth. To them, it was not destruction. It was the sound of hope being born. On the bridge of the warship, the crew worked with furious speed. Alarms screamed, consoles sparked, and the ship shuddered under the force of enemy fire. But still they fought. Cannons pounded in rhythm, launching round after round into the void. Missiles streaked out like burning arrows, tearing holes into alien hulls. Pilots darted in and out of the chaos, their voices sharp over the comms as they called out targets. The enemy had not expected resistance, and their surprise gave humanity its first advantage. "Enemy ship down!" a voice shouted across the bridge. The crew cheered, but the celebration was short. Dozens more ships moved to fill the gap, swarming like insects drawn to flame. The captain's voice cut through the noise, steady and cold. "Stay focused. Do not waste fire. Target the closest." The crew obeyed, their fear held in check by his calm command. They all knew the truth. They were outnumbered. They were outgunned. But they were not out of the fight. On the ground, in the underground shelter, the survivors could hear the new battle raging above. The engineer stared at his device, watching energy readings rise and fall. His hands trembled with every spike. "They're fighting them," he whispered. "They're really fighting them." A mother pulled her child close and whispered, "Do you hear that? That's the sound of our people." For the first time, the word "our" did not sound empty. The alien fleet responded with fury. Their weapons drained the void itself, beams of red light striking across space and cutting through the Resolute's shields. Systems flickered, power dropped, and the ship groaned under the strain. One strike tore through the hull of a human fighter, sending it spinning into fire. The pilot's last cry echoed over comms before silence claimed it. The crew gritted their teeth. Every loss cut deep, but every death fueled their rage. "Bring us in closer," the captain ordered. Gasps rose across the bridge. Closer meant danger, but it also meant power. The warship surged forward, cannons firing at point-blank range. Alien ships exploded in clusters, torn apart before they could react. The shock of human defiance spread across the battlefield. For the first time, the invaders faltered. They were not used to resistance. They were not used to pray that bit back. In the shelter, the governor raised his head as another explosion shook the ground. His voice was hoarse, but there was strength in it again. "They are fighting for us. We must endure for them." The people clung to his words. Soldiers checked their rifles again, as if the sound of the battle had reminded them they were still warriors. Children whispered to each other, asking if the humans in the sky could really win. The mothership, enormous and unshaken, began to move. Its massive shadow stretched across the battlefield, its weapons glowing with power. Beams of energy struck the Resolute, draining more of its strength. Sparks filled the bridge, crew members struggling to keep the systems alive. The captain stood tall, his eyes fixed on the enemy. "If we fall striking," he said. His words spread across the ship, filling every heart with steel. "Fire all batteries!" The order roared through the comms. Every cannon, every missile launcher, every weapon on the Resolute unleashed its fury. The sky lit up like a second sun. Alien ships exploded in every direction, fire tearing across the dark. For a brief moment, the battlefield belonged to humanity. The survivors underground felt the shaking grow stronger, but this time they smiled through their fear. "They are winning," the engineer whispered. "They are really winning." Yet victory was not certain. The alien mothership did not fall. Its weapons struck again and again, each hit carving deeper into the Resolute. The crew struggled to hold the line, blood and sweat mixing with the sparks and smoke of the bridge. Still, no one gave up. Every hand worked faster, every voice shouted louder. They were soldiers of humanity, and they would not surrender. On the surface, people gathered near the entrances of the shelters, listening to the thunder above. They could not see the war, but they could feel it. And in their hearts, fear began to twist into something new. It was not just hope anymore. It was pride. They whispered the same words, passing them from one to another until the whole shelter carried the chant. Humanity fights. Above, the Resolute cut through the enemy fleet like a blade, scarred but unbroken. Fire trailed behind it, wreckage burned in its wake, but still it moved forward. The captain's voice carried across the comms. "We are not finished. We are not broken. Show them who we are." And the crew answered with fire. For the first time since the invasion began, the galaxy saw what it meant to face humanity. The sky over the colony had become a battlefield of fire and shadows. Smaller alien ships were burning, their twisted remains falling like meteors through the atmosphere. The Resolute had carved a path through the swarm, but now it faced the true terror of the invasion. The alien mothership moved forward at last, its enormous body blocking out the stars, its surface alive with streams of red light. It was not just a vessel, it was a fortress, a predator born to crush worlds. Against it, the warship looked small, a lone blade facing a mountain. On the bridge of the Resolute, alarms screamed. The crew fought to keep systems alive, their hands moving over flickering consoles. Sparks rained from the ceiling, smoke filled the air, but no one stopped. The captain stood at the center, his voice steady even as the ship shuddered under another impact. "Target the mothership. All weapons fire on my command." The crew obeyed without hesitation. They knew this was the moment that would decide everything. The first strike came without warning. A massive beam of red energy erupted from the alien giant, cutting across the void. It smashed into the Resolute's shields, draining them instantly. The ship groaned like a wounded beast, lights flickering as systems overloaded. Engineers shouted over comms, reporting damage. Whole sections of the hull were failing. But the captain's voice cut through the chaos. "We are still here. Fire!" Cannons roared in unison. Missiles streaked across the darkness, slamming into the mothership's hull. Explosions rippled across its surface, tearing chunks of metal into space. For the first time, the alien giant slowed. Its movement faltered, just slightly, but enough to show that it could bleed. The crew of the Resolute cheered, their spirits rising. They had hurt the monster. But the celebration was brief. More beams cut through space, striking the warship again and again. One tore through the starboard side, sending fire and debris into the void. A fighter squadron was destroyed in an instant, pilots' voices cut off mid-scream. The ship trembled, but still it held its ground. On the ground below, survivors felt the tremors in their bones. Children cried, mothers prayed, soldiers clenched their fists. Every blast above could be the end, but still the sound of human guns answered. In the shelter, the engineer stared at his tablet, watching the readings spike and fall. His face was pale with fear. "They can't hold this forever," he whispered. The governor placed a hand on his shoulder. His voice was hoarse, but steady. "They will hold long enough. They must." Around them, the people listened in silence, their hope and fear tangled together like fire and smoke. Back in orbit, the clash grew fiercer. Fighters darted between beams of energy, striking the mothership's defenses with everything they had. Some never returned, their ships vanishing into bursts of light. Others carved paths for the warship's heavy guns, buying seconds with their lives. Every man and woman aboard the Resolute fought as if the fate of the entire species rested on their shoulders. And perhaps it did. The mothership shifted its strategy. Sections of its hull opened, releasing swarms of smaller drones. They streaked through space like burning arrows, slamming against the Resolute's shields, tearing at its hull. Alarms screamed louder, the ship shaking under the assault. Engineers shouted for more power, but there was none left to give. The captain gripped the rail, his jaw tight. "Push forward," he ordered. "Close the distance. We fight them at the heart." Gasps rose across the bridge. To move closer meant entering the mothership's deadliest range. But no one questioned the command. The Resolute surged forward, its engines blazing, cutting straight into the storm. Cannons fired at full strength, missiles launched in waves. Explosions lit the mothership's surface, fire spreading across its monstrous skin. The galaxy trembled with the clash of titans. On the ground, People huddled together as the tremors grew worse. The shelter shook, dust falling like rain. A child asked, "Are they winning?" No one answered. Even the governor could not speak. But deep inside, all of them felt it. The humans above were refusing to fall. And that refusal gave them strength to endure one more minute, one more hour, one more day. The mothership struck again, a beam tearing through the Resolute's hull. Whole sections went dark. Lives were lost in an instant. But still the warship pressed forward. The captain's voice carried through the chaos, cold and sharp. "We fight till the last breath. Humanity does not bow." His words echoed across the ship, reaching every crew member, every soldier, every pilot still fighting in the black. The clash of giants raged on, a storm of fire and steel, of light and shadow. Neither side yielded. Neither side broke. The colony below shook under the fury of the battle, its people caught between despair and hope. Above, the two titans circled each other, striking again and again, each blow threatening to decide the fate of an entire world. The end had not come yet. But it was close. Everyone could feel it. The Resolute groaned under the weight of the enemy's fury. The mothership's weapons cut across its hull again and again, each strike tearing away more of the warship's strength. Fires burned in its corridors, smoke filled the air, and medics carried the wounded through blood-stained halls. The ship was dying, but it still fought. Every cannon still fired, every missile still launched. Humanity was not done yet. On the bridge, sparks rained from broken consoles. Officers shouted damage reports, voices frantic but determined. Shields collapsing. Engines at 30%. Hull breach on Deck 9. The captain's jaw tightened. He did not need the reports to know the truth. The warship could not survive much longer. Yet his eyes remained fixed on the enemy. The mothership still loomed ahead, scarred but unbroken, its red light pulsing like the heartbeat of a monster. It would not stop until the colony was ash. In the engineering bay, a young officer slammed his fist against the console. "We can't hold this. They'll tear us apart in minutes." Another engineer, older and calm, stared at the readings with grim eyes. "There is one way," he whispered. The others turned to him. "If we overload the core, we can trigger a chain reaction. The explosion will tear through their mothership." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. If the plan worked, the enemy would die, but so would they. The message reached the bridge. The captain listened in silence, his face like stone. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, then opened them with cold resolve. "Prepare the sequence," he ordered. Gasps filled the room, but no one argued. They all knew the cost. They all knew it might be the only way. Humanity's survival demanded sacrifice. The crew worked quickly. Engineers set the overload sequence, their hands trembling as they typed the codes. Pilots prepared for one last strike, whispering quiet goodbyes into their comms. Soldiers tightened their armor, gripping their rifles as if ready to fight death itself. On every deck, people understood what was about to happen. Fear filled their hearts, but so did pride. They were not running. They were not surrendering. They would meet the enemy head-on. On the ground below, the survivors in the shelters felt the change. The thunder above grew sharper, louder, as if the warship's fury had doubled. The engineer in the shelter checked his device, his face pale. "They're overloading their core," he whispered. "They're going to burn themselves to stop it." His voice broke as he spoke. Mothers clutched their children tighter. Soldiers bowed their heads. The governor whispered, "They are giving their lives for us." The captain addressed his crew. His voice carried through every corridor of the warship. "We were born as humans. Weak, fragile, but stubborn. Today we show the galaxy who we are. We may fall, but our fire will live forever. For the colony. For humanity." His words echoed through the ship, and voices answered him. Soldiers, pilots, engineers, they shouted together, their voices filled with defiance. "For humanity." The Resolute turned sharply, charging straight at the mothership. Alien drones swarmed, firing beams of red light, but the warship cut through them with relentless fire. Explosions trailed in its wake as smaller ships shattered. The mothership unleashed its fury, but the Resolute did not slow. Its engines burned brighter than ever, pushing it forward like a spear of light. On the bridge, the countdown began. "Core overload in 2 minutes," a voice reported. The captain nodded. His eyes never left the enemy. Around him, the crew worked with grim focus. No one wept. No one begged. They had accepted their fate. Their deaths would buy life for thousands. Their sacrifice would be remembered. In the underground shelter, the people prayed. Some cried, others whispered words of thanks into the silence. The engineer clenched his fists, tears streaming down his face. "They're going to end it," he said. "They're going to save us." The governor closed his eyes, listening to the thunder of the battle, and whispered, "May their fire burn forever." Above, the mothership loomed larger and larger as the Resolute closed the distance. Alien weapons struck again, tearing holes into the warship's hull, but nothing stopped its charge. The countdown reached its final moments. 10 seconds, a voice said calmly. The captain stood tall, his hand on the console. "Hold steady," he ordered. The crew obeyed. The mothership tried to move away, but it was too late. The Resolute was already upon it, ramming straight into its heart. The captain's voice echoed one last time through the ship. "For humanity!" The crew shouted with him. The core reached critical, and in the next instant, light consumed the void. The explosion ripped through space, brighter than a star, tearing the mothership apart in a storm of fire and metal. The shockwave thundered across the battlefield, shredding the alien fleet. Below, the ground shook violently, and the people in the shelters cried out, clinging to one another as the world trembled. Then silence followed, heavy and endless. The colony survivors slowly lifted their heads. The sky was no longer filled with alien ships. The mothership's shadow was gone. All that remained were burning fragments falling like dying stars. Humanity's warship had fallen, but it had taken the enemy with it. The people wept, their tears falling not from despair, but from gratitude. The Resolute was gone, but its sacrifice had saved them all. In the silence of the shelter, the governor spoke softly, his voice carrying through the darkness. "They gave their lives, but in their fire, we are reborn. Humanity stands because they did not fall." And in every heart, the same truth burned. The warship was gone, but its spirit lived on. The silence after the explosion felt endless. For a long moment, the colony was wrapped in a strange stillness, broken only by the faint crackle of fire in the distance. The sky above was dark, filled with drifting debris that glowed faintly as it burned in the atmosphere. The great alien mothership was gone, torn apart by the sacrifice of the Resolute. No more weapons rained down, no more alien shadows moved across the land. Humanity had survived, but at a terrible cost. In the underground shelters, people slowly began to rise. For hours they had cowered, expecting death, yet now they found themselves alive. The ground still trembled faintly from the shockwave, dust falling from the ceilings. Children clung to their mothers, soldiers helped the injured stand, and the governor leaned heavily on the wall, his eyes red with exhaustion. But as the dust settled, they all felt the same truth. They had been saved. The warship's fire had burned away the darkness. The engineer, who had tracked every moment of the battle on his device, stared at the screen as tears blurred his vision. The readings of the Resolute were gone. No signals, no energy trace, only silence. They are gone," he whispered, his voice breaking. A hush fell over the shelter. Everyone knew what he meant. Humanity's warship had given everything. For them. For all of them. Above the planet, the battlefield was littered with wreckage. Pieces of alien drones drifted like dead insects, their once perfect formations shattered forever. The remains of the mothership floated as burning fragments, a graveyard of twisted metal. And among the debris, faint echoes of the explosion still shimmered in space, like scars carved into the night. It was a sight both terrifying and beautiful, the cost of victory, and the proof of humanity's defiance. When the survivors emerged from the shelters, they saw the ruins of their colony. Buildings lay in rubble, fires smoldered across the streets, and the air was heavy with smoke. Yet above them, the stars shone clearer than ever, no longer hidden by alien shadows. For the first time in days, the people breathed without fear. Children pointed at the sky, asking where the warship had gone. Parents knelt, telling them of the sacrifice, their voices trembling with pride and sorrow. The governor climbed to the top of a ruined building, his voice carrying over the weary crowd. "The Resolute is gone," he said, his tone solemn but strong. "But because of them, we are still here. They gave us this dawn. They gave us life. Humanity does not bow. Humanity does not end." His words spread through the crowd like fire. The people began to cheer, their voices growing louder until the ruins shook with their defiance. They were alive, and they would not forget who had saved them. Far away, in the command centers of other colonies and stations, the explosion had been detected. At first, silence spread across human networks, disbelief at the loss of one of their finest warships. But when reports confirmed the destruction of the alien mothership, shock turned into something greater: hope. For the first time, humanity had faced an enemy stronger, faster, and merciless. Yet they had stood and they had won. The message spread across the stars: humanity was not weak prey. Humanity fought back. In the following days, the colony buried its dead, mourned its losses, and rebuilt from the ashes. Survivors painted the name of the Resolute across walls and stones, so that none would forget. Children carried pieces of wreckage like treasures, symbols of the ship that had saved them. Songs were whispered in the night, telling the story of the warship that had torn through the darkness. The people had been broken, but their spirit was unshaken. One evening, as the governor stood by the wreckage of a fallen tower, the engineer approached him. His hands trembled as he held out his device. "Governor," he said, "there is something you need to see." The governor frowned and looked at the screen. A faint signal had appeared. It was weak, barely holding, but it carried words. A transmission. The governor pressed the speaker, and a voice, distorted but unmistakably human, filled the air. "This is humanity's warship. We stand together. Always." Gasps spread through the crowd as they gathered around, listening to the voice that seemed to come from the grave. No one knew if it was a final recorded message, left before the end, or something else, something stranger. But it did not matter. The words struck their hearts like fire. The people raised their fists, their voices echoing in the ruins. "We stand together." The colony looked to the stars that night, their eyes filled with both pride and fear. They had won this battle, but questions remained. Who were these aliens? Were they the first wave of an even greater threat? The silence of space held no answers. But one truth was certain. Humanity was no longer a silent voice in the galaxy. They had shown their fire, and the galaxy had seen it. The dawn had come, and with it, defiance. Humanity would rise from its scars, stronger than before, ready to face whatever darkness came next. The memory of the Resolute burned in every heart, a promise that humanity would never bow, never break. And as the stars watched silently above, the story of the warship that tore through the darkness became the beginning of something greater. The beginning of humanity's place among the stars.